Hello and welcome. My name is Thomas Kevin Dolan. I'm the writer and author of Little Fag, A Journey of Self-Acceptance and Healing. It is my memoir. Today I'm going to read chapter 16, entitled The Footrace for Life, and it begins on page 103. My memories are filled with running. I had plenty of reasons to run, as did many in my family. As a young man, I transformed my running into an athletic career. I held records in track as a sprinter. The appeal of running a marathon was based solely on enduring 26 miles, and endure I did. I would steal from stores and run. I would heist empty beer bottles from a neighbor's garage and run to the corner store to cash them in for candy. There was little incentive to stop. Even the grip of a plainclothes security guard wouldn't put an end to my running. But I kept going, sure-footed. I ran from responsibility. I ran from relationships. I ran from the truth. I ran from the whispers of my heart. I ran away from, not towards, people. Running was an art for the Dolans. I had a lineage of teachers, but mostly I ran for my sexuality. What I braved. With a closely guarded secret as the fuel for my shame, I would do anything to distract people from knowing who I really was. At a conference one day, as I helped fill book orders, a coach colleague looked at me and said, "I know who you are. You're a fulfiller. You fulfill what people most want in their lives." Stunned, I looked at her and shrugged. I felt a shame in my chest. That pain pierced my heart. So I ran away. It's classic for humans to use any means possible to cover up the light of who we really are. But when we're so ashamed of the light and think we'll not be loved or liked if we shine that light, life and its cover-up strategies become dangerous. I spent a childhood covering up my sensitivity. I used my athleticism, my prowess both on the playground and in the arena of masculinity or sports, to make sure no one saw the pain I experienced as my life unfolded. What I wasn't always prepared for was the dynamic of homoeroticism that was intrinsically woven into sports. I can remember, as an elementary school-aged boy, attending a baseball game with my dad. Each time a player crossed the home plate, bringing in another run, his butt was slapped by his teammates. Adding to my confusion, attraction, and even embarrassment, the crowd cheered on the behavior. There was no way I was going to ask my dad why it was okay that those boys got to slap another boy's butt, when I heard in church the previous Sunday how all gay people were going to hell. On one of the rare occasions that we had television, albeit in black and white, at home, I watched a slow-motion film of a black football player running towards the camera. To this day, I can still recall every sinewy strand of muscle fiber in motion. As I gazed in awe, the pleasure I felt watching this image was interrupted by a comment hurled from one of my brothers. He bellowed, "Wouldn't a slow-motion movie of a girl running on a beach turn you on more?" Terror and shame filled my young body. Being a jock wasn't enough to cover up for a queer little boy. What I braved for most of my young life was getting caught being who I was. When I think of the stories I made up if I were caught, they still weren't enough to stop me from playing with or running with little boys. Mom told me when I came out to her that she always knew I was gay. She jokingly added, "I love that all your gay heroes and crushes were male cartoon characters." That was a pretty smart way to keep yourself from getting beat up since all your brothers watched that same stuff. I felt the anger rise in me. It was still up to me to run away from her hurtful, humor-wrapped comment. The unlearning. Even today, there will be moments when I'll drop my husband's hand while walking, and sometimes I don't even know why. Fear is usually the culprit. When I first learned about internalized homophobia, I thought it was something only straight people suffered from. I hadn't a clue about its dynamic. Internalized homophobia is defined as the involuntary belief by queer people that the homophobia lies, stereotypes, and myths about them which are delivered to everyone in a heterosexist, homophobic society, are true. I perfected the best gay jokes. I was open season, and it was open season on queers as a way for the light of my own gayness to be deflected away from me. It was survival of the non-gayest. I hadn't a clue that there are two logical, predictable consequences of a lifetime of such messages. First, heterosexuals will grow to believe many of the messages and treat queer people accordingly. They will be thoroughly indoctrinated into their role in heterosexism, protecting their heterosexual privilege by colluding with the perpetration of heterosexism and homophobia. It wasn't a consequence I really cared about. Here's the second logical consequence. Now, this one I did care about. These same messages also stick to queer people, resulting in internalized homophobia. It stuck on me. I was inadvertently taught to act out the lies and stereotypes, doubting myself and other gay people. My therapist would point this out and called it horizontal hostility. I had become a colluder with the perpetuation of heterosexism. Similar to the example I've been raised with, I bought into the idea that all relationships were compromised and comprised of a boy and a girl. It dawned on me that all I saw in my external closeted world was the heterosexist system that was being maintained and passed on to the next generation. I participated in a culture. For me, it was my Catholic, homophobic sporting family that believed the lies and the stereotypes to varying degrees. My family colluded with heterosexism by performing their assigned roles. Here was the most pervasive form of oppression, and I was out front, leading the parade without a clue what I was doing. All forms of oppression, racism, sexism, heterosexism, classism, ableism, anti-Semitism, et al., need to be addressed. But because mine was internalized opposition and internalized oppression, it interfered with me noticing its impact on my life. The unlearning for me was to take conscious action to recognize, acknowledge, and interrupt all forms of my internalized oppression. The hardest part of my work, which took place in my 30s, was to recognize and examine the harmful impact of a lifetime of homophobic and heterosexist messages on my own self-image, as well as my attitudes towards other gay people. My jokes stopped. Putting down what would become my community didn't solve any problems. It just created them. I learned to do and be better. Whew. It's a really challenging dynamic, particularly when I lived for such a long time as a victim of what it is that heterosexist or heteronormative view of life would be hurled at me. And ultimately, and of course I know this to be true with white supremacy. I always thought white supremacy was the shark in the water, but I've learned that white supremacy is the water. And I would suggest that heterosexism and this heteronormative filter on life is probably unrecognized by those that are heterosexist and those that are heterosexual. So it too might be the water. I mean, does a fish know that it's actually swimming in water? I'll not wax philosophically here, but my point is this. It took me a long time to figure out that I was deflecting something in me I didn't want the world to see by actually going after some aspect of a gay person, because I thought if I could kind of slay it in them, I might be able to slay it in myself, right? Slay the dragon within by slaying the dragon without. And of course it never worked. And when I finally landed on the realization, right, I felt this tremendous guilt. I thought it was really horrible that even though I was closeted, I'd been making fun of gay people. So when I righted that ship for myself, and I did it with much humility, it's amazing the level of self-acceptance that I was able to lean into. It was amazing how I could begin to proclaim that I was enough, that I was loved, that I was lovable. Once that weight of internalized homophobia was gone, it freed me up to love me for who it was that I was and who it is that I am today. And because I've done what I think is a great job of healing my internalized homophobia, although it will always be with me, but by saying from time to time that I can be homophobic, it allows me to consciously remember that the impact of that, the heteronormative view, is so strong that from time to time, I still may find myself coming from the place. I think I can catch myself much quicker. So it isn't this notion of I'm not homophobic or I'll never be. No, I wouldn't trust myself to make that kind of declaration, because there would be moments, and have been moments, where I can breathe into my own internalized homophobia. My work is to continue to name that elephant in the room so that it no longer has power. So I have it, it doesn't have me. And the gifts from being able to do that are extraordinary. The biggest one is peace, right? This internal peace that I possess. And also, it's really interesting that when I have, one of the benefits of doing that work, of healing, right, my internalized homophobe, is that for the most part, homophobia doesn't come to me. And I think it's predicated on this notion of, once you heal an aspect of yourself, it's very rare that you'll see a reflection of that aspect in the outer world. So little did I know what I was creating for myself was a sense of liberation, where I could set myself free from something that I was actually taught, unconsciously repeating, and of course knowing it was targeted at me, but by going after somebody else. Right? The biggest benefit from that, as I said before, right, is this great sense of peace. And ultimately, it really makes me an awful lot more compassionate, and I think empathetic, because I see as I see other people, other gay people really struggling with it, because I've been in those shoes, I can be empathetic for what it is that they're challenged by. But I'm really proud of healing that, because it's allowed me to embrace another aspect of myself, a fuller aspect of myself, that's always been calling to be loved.